So welcome to my chat today with Dr. Nathan Castle, who's a clinical psychologist and an outcome monitoring guru. Welcome.
I didn't title myself, so thank you for the title. Yeah.
Pleasure. You've become pretty well known in the outcome monitoring, routine outcome monitoring, feedback informed treatment space. So I wanted to get to know you a little bit, and I suppose to firstly start with your journey to where you are now professionally.
Yeah, I guess in terms of routine outcome monitoring and my journey there, in my training I was lucky enough to do my internship at Turning Point Drug and Alcohol, being part of a clinical research project. So not an academic research project, we were applying acceptance and commitment therapy to clients who experienced borderline personality disorder traits and substance use comorbidly. And we were kind of trying to see if ACT could be a viable short-term alternative to DBT. And so essentially you can imagine heaps of questionnaires. And heaps of symptom measures, coping measures, and at the end of that whole process I got to see the results and we were pretty good. But interestingly enough, the one client that I thought I was definitely helping was deteriorating.
Okay.
And I only found that out at the end. The research project was over. So that was, I guess, it certainly sat with me for a long time that I couldn't figure that out. And I've since come to realize that most psychologists can't without an objective measure, which is okay. But the other factor was in the CAT team. We worked really hard and everyone worked really, really hard. But what I found was that a lot of people were feeling quite burnt out and stressed, myself included. And I really found that for me, having some direction for treatment, even in the most complex of situations, was something that I really wanted, probably at that time, for containment, for my own self-care, for my own professional fulfillment. And certainly since I've been able to work with routine outcome monitoring, it has given me a lot more self-care and a lot more kind of fulfillment in my work.
So that sense of collecting data to see how much you're benefiting your patients becomes an affirming process where you're like, yes, my work is making a difference.
Yeah, it's both actually. There's definitely that of yes, I'm making a difference, but there's also that one where you're like, you're how many sessions in and they're not getting better and you go, yes, I know.
Yeah.
And that's just as affirming for me, because for me, I know I wouldn't have picked it up or unlikely to pick it up.
Yeah.
So it adds a layer of then curiosity of, talking to the client, whether it be, Keith or whoever's in front of me, and going, I'm not sure that this is working for you. Is there something that I'm missing? And usually the client has the answers, and some of those conversations are, some of the best of my kind of career clinically.
And so most psychologists will have heard about what routine outcome monitoring is. And in fact, there's heaps of data showing that many psychologists have planned to implement some sort of feedback system or routine outcome monitoring system. If you were explaining to a new grad psychologist what is routine outcome monitoring and why is it important, what would you say?
If we are going to the GP, and we have some kind of symptoms that we're presenting with, we expect that he or she or they are going to check our blood pressure or check our temperature. It gives them a guide about what to do next. And that's how I see routine outcome monitoring is your guide.
Okay. And so for a GP, it might be doing blood tests or blood pressure.
Yeah.
The way that psychologists generally measure it will be questionnaires. What questionnaires do you use in your practice?
So I used to use the DAS-21 for ages, and it was a really good measure. Most people use it. I used it more looking at distress overall, rather than the symptoms of depression, anxiety, and stress, because clients can come in with anything. So I use it as a measure of distress. And then more recently, I've moved to Core 10 as part of NovoPsych. And Core 10 is a measure of distress with 10 questions rather than 21. But the thing that I really like about the Core 10 is it has a little line, and if you get a client under that line, it indicates that they're no longer in the clinical range. They are reporting symptoms consistent with anyone else out there walking on the street, not in treatment. But when we get there, celebrating, going, how amazing is this that you started here and we got you under that line, and maybe now's the time that we part ways.
Yeah, and I understand that now, as part of your work with NovoPsych, that you, one of the reasons why you want to, and why you're passionate about this, is spreading the word to other people and to help practices implement routine outcome monitoring. Well, why would a practice want to do that?
What you can actually do is you can find out what percentage of my clients are dropping out. It's really key metric to have a look at engagement. What percentage of my clients are recovering or improving? What percentage of my clients are maybe not getting better? And is there a pattern there? Is there something about a certain age group or presentation that maybe you're not working as well with and might need some training in? And then lastly, how effective is the treatment overall on average in that clinic? But then there's the actual client side, and routine outcome monitoring, using that and integrating that into treatment, has shown to reduce dropout and improve the rates of clients recovering. And at the end of the day, if you just come to client experience, then that's worth its weight in gold.
And so for you, you've extensively evaluated your own practice. What were some of the things that you learned about the way you work as a psychologist?
Yeah, I found out I have strengths and weaknesses like every other psychologist. And I definitely found out overall I learned much more from my limitations than I did my strengths. There is more to grow from that side of the coin than necessarily the strengths side of the coin. So the main thing that I learned was that I have a dropout rate of around 10 to 11%. I have a deterioration rate of around the same, and body image and relationship counselling in particular is where I'm more likely to get a client who's going to get less than an optimal outcome. So what I really mean is they don't get better, they potentially get worse, or they drop out.
Okay, and so does that mean that now you try not to take on as many of those clients and try to gear your practice towards taking on the clients you know you're good at?
Really interestingly, I don't have a broad strategy overall. It's very individual. So, I've done more training in body image, which I think is important, because sometimes I might be working with someone, their formulation has many aspects to it. I just don't want to, refer on just because body image is part of that.
Okay.
And I think that's more prevalent.
So it was really, you identified areas that you needed to grow as a clinician. Well, it's really interesting to learn from your journey, being firstly not knowing where to start with routine outcome monitoring, to where you are today, which is someone that's evaluated their own practice, put those results out there, and now helping other clinics do it for themselves. So welcome aboard to NovoPsych, and if any practice or clinician wants to get in contact with you to run their own evaluation or just to learn more about routine outcome monitoring, what's the best way to get in contact?
Well, we'll have my email at the bottom of the screen here. They can get in touch, and I just am really excited to work with anyone that's interested in this space, even if at the start it's just a few questions. And more than that, I'm excited to be part of NovoPsych.
Cool.